That feeling, the one that makes your palms sweat before a presentation, makes you hesitate to share your true opinion, or causes you to endlessly second-guess your appearance or your choices. It's the fear of being judged, the anxiety that others are scrutinizing you, evaluating you negatively, and possibly rejecting you. This fear is incredibly common. For many, it's a subtle background hum, but for others, it can be a powerful, paralyzing force that dictates their behavior, limits their self-expression, and prevents them from living authentically. We might avoid social situations, shy away from opportunities, or constantly try to be what we think others want us to be, all in an effort to escape the dreaded sting of negative judgment. Why are we so exquisitely sensitive to the perceived opinions of others? Is it possible to care less about what people think, without becoming cold or indifferent? And how can we build the inner resilience to express our true selves and pursue our goals, even when facing the possibility of disapproval? This isn't just about social awkwardness. It's a deep-seated psychological response tied to our fundamental need for belonging, and it's a challenge that philosophy has offered profound perspectives on for millennia, guiding us towards a more internally anchored sense of self. Today, we're going to unravel the pervasive fear of being judged. We'll explore what psychology tells us about why this fear is so deeply ingrained and how it impacts our thoughts and actions. Then, we'll turn to timeless philosophical wisdom, from Stoic indifference to external opinions to existentialist calls for authenticity, for powerful frameworks on how to diminish this fear and cultivate greater self-acceptance and courage. By the end, you'll have a deeper understanding of this common anxiety and practical strategies to live more freely and authentically. So, let's begin by looking at the psychology of why we fear judgment so intensely. Psychologically, the fear of judgment is closely linked to our evolutionary need for social acceptance. For our ancestors, being accepted by the group was critical for survival. Rejection or ostracism could mean death. Our brains are therefore wired to be highly sensitive to social cues that might indicate disapproval or potential exclusion. This ancient survival mechanism is still very much active today, even if the stakes are usually much lower. Social anxiety disorder is, in essence, an extreme fear of being judged and negatively evaluated in social situations. But even for those who don't meet clinical criteria, the underlying mechanisms are similar. We worry about saying or doing the wrong thing, appearing foolish, or being seen as inadequate. Our self-esteem is often intertwined with how we believe others perceive us. If our sense of worth is heavily dependent on external validation, the thought of negative judgment can feel like a direct attack on our core identity. Cognitive biases play a significant role in fueling this fear. Spotlight effect. We tend to overestimate how much others notice and pay attention to our appearance and behavior. We feel like we're under a constant spotlight, when in reality, most people are more focused on themselves. Mind reading, we assume we know what others are thinking, and usually we assume those thoughts are critical. Catastrophizing. We imagine that if someone judges us negatively, the consequences will be disastrous, social ruin, complete humiliation, etc. Past negative experiences, such as being bullied, harshly criticized, or shamed, can also sensitize us to the fear of judgment, making us hypervigilant to any signs of disapproval. So, psychology helps us understand that the fear of judgment is a natural, albeit often exaggerated, response rooted in our social nature, our cognitive patterns, and our past experiences. It shows us why this fear has such a grip. Now, let's turn to philosophy for wisdom on how to loosen that grip and cultivate inner freedom. Philosophers have long advocated for basing one's sense of self and guiding one's actions on internal principles rather than the fickle and uncontrollable opinions of others. The Stoics, like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, are perhaps the most direct antidote to the fear of judgment. They taught that the opinions of others are externals, completely outside of our control, and therefore should not be the basis of our peace of mind or self-worth. Worrying about what others think is irrational because you cannot control their thoughts. What you can control is your own character, your judgments, and your actions. True freedom, for a Stoic, lies in this internal locus of control. If you are living virtuously and according to reason, the judgment of others, whether positive or negative, is irrelevant to your true good. Socrates famously lived and died by his principles, often in defiance of popular opinion and judgment. His focus was on self-knowledge, truth, and the pursuit of virtue. He believed that it was better to be true to oneself and one's reasoned convictions than to curry favor or avoid disapproval. His example demonstrates a profound commitment to internal integrity over external validation. Existentialist philosophers emphasize authenticity, living in accordance with one's true self and freely chosen values, rather than conforming to societal expectations or the judgments of others. The fear of judgment can lead to bad faith, Sartre, where we deny our freedom and live inauthentically to please others. Embracing our freedom means accepting the responsibility of defining ourselves, even if it invites judgment. The courage to be oneself, despite potential disapproval, is a core existential virtue. These philosophical perspectives encourage us to shift our focus inward to our values, our character, our choices, and to find our anchor there, rather than in the ever-shifting seas of public opinion. This is where combining psychological understanding with philosophical wisdom provides a powerful pathway. Psychology helps us identify the source of the fear, our wiring, our biases. Philosophy provides the reason and the framework for why and how to transcend it. Psychological techniques can help us manage the anxiety and challenge the distorted thoughts. Philosophical principles give us the courage and the conviction to prioritize authenticity and inner integrity. So, how do we practically apply this combined understanding to reduce the fear of being judged? First, use psychological awareness to identify the fear and its triggers. When do you feel most afraid of judgment? What specific thoughts or situations activate it? Recognize the cognitive biases at play, spotlight effect, mind reading. Next, apply the Stoic principle of control. When the fear arises, ask yourself, is this person's judgment of me within my control? The answer is no. Are my own thoughts, values, and actions within my control? Yes. Consciously redirect your mental energy from worrying about their uncontrollable thoughts to focusing on your controllable actions and integrity. Challenge your catastrophic thoughts about judgment using cognitive restructuring, a psychological technique. Ask, if someone does judge me negatively, what is really the worst that can happen? Will I survive it? What are the chances of that worst-case scenario actually occurring? Often, the feared consequences are far less dire than our anxious mind imagines. Practice mindfulness to create distance from anxious thoughts about judgment. Observe them as mental events without getting swept away by them or automatically believing them. This helps reduce their emotional power. Embrace the existentialist call to authenticity. Make a conscious choice to act in alignment with your values and express your true self, even if it feels uncomfortable or risks disapproval. Each small act of authentic self-expression, despite fear, builds courage and self-trust. Remember that trying to please everyone is a recipe for pleasing no one, especially yourself. Gradually expose yourself to situations that trigger mild fear of judgment, a psychological technique called exposure therapy, used carefully. Start small. Maybe share an opinion in a low-stakes environment. As you see that the feared consequences don't materialize, or that you can handle them, your fear will lessen. Remember that the goal isn't to never care what anyone thinks, as appropriate social awareness is healthy. The goal is to not let the fear of negative judgment paralyze you, dictate your choices, or diminish your sense of self-worth. It's about valuing your own inner compass more than the perceived opinions of the crowd. The fear of being judged is a powerful inhibitor for many. But by understanding its psychological roots and arming ourselves with the timeless wisdom of philosophy, we can learn to navigate it with greater courage. We can choose to live more authentically, guided by our own values, and find a deeper, more resilient sense of self that isn't dependent on the fleeting approval of others. Living free from the tyranny of others' perceived judgment is a profound form of liberation. Thank you for joining me in exploring this common human fear. If this resonated, please like and subscribe. In what situations do you most fear being judged? Share your experiences in the comments.